What's going on, you guys? My name is Cody Thixton, and this is Interesting Podcast. Coming to you guys live on April 11th, 2026, 123, where tonight we actually have a very special guest. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is an absolute privilege to introduce to you guys SID SYLUM.
What's going on, everybody?
How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing really good. I know I've actually been really looking forward to actually sitting down with you and kind of picking apart your mind when it comes to pro wrestling. So I'm really excited.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. I any chance to talk about wrestling, I'm always down for.
It's awesome. Well, let's just start out for all the people who maybe don't know you. Maybe you can introduce your name, where you're from, and maybe how long you've been into professional wrestling.
Yeah. My name's SID SYLUM. I'm originally from Surrey, British Columbia, Canada. But I've been in Portland, Oregon now, good old US of A, for about 10 years. And this year will be 21 years I've been involved in professional wrestling. So long time.
That is crazy. Yeah, I know that's something I definitely want to get into in a little bit here. But like, when did you start watching professional wrestling? Were you a little kid when you actually started watching it?
Yeah, so when you're in like kindergarten and you got to like paint who you want to be, and everyone did like a cop or a firefighter or whatever, I did Hulk Hogan. So that actually, I was probably 5, and my dad started taking me to local wrestling shows. So I saw independent wrestling before I even saw WWE or any of NWA or any of that. So it's been since I can remember, it's been wrestling.
That is really awesome. So you had just said that your dad actually brought you to a local indie show. What was the one thing that drew you to professional wrestling when you were sitting there as a kid watching it?
Honestly, I don't remember even one thing, just everything. Like there was some terrible gimmicks, and I'm sure it was terrible wrestling, but I loved it all. I loved how angry people would get. I remember trying to throw like a soda cup into the ring, and someone like caught my hand, like I don't know, just a security or something, yelled at me or whatever, and I was just like, this is amazing. It was blood, there was athletics, it was, yeah, and I was fully hooked. I remember someone went to the hospital, and I was like trying to make him a get well card. Uh, so yeah, it's everything, just kind of uh, everything.
That is really cool. So, like, where were you officially trained at?
What was the name of it at the time? The In Pain Asylum. It was basically ECCW school. Michelle Starr started the training, and then it switched over to Scotty Mac a little bit, but mostly Aaron Idle out in Surrey, British Columbia. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Very interesting. So, like, what are some of your inspirations? Do you have any favorite wrestlers that you like to try to maybe project in some fashion?
Yeah, I like Dynamite Kid has always been my number one. Obviously he's a little bit smaller than me. He can't I can't do everything, but there when I first started, I was doing the diving headbutt, the tombstone, and snap suplexes, and belly to backs and all that. I took everything from him I possibly could. But as I've gotten old, like I love still watching Stan Hansen and that '90s All Japan, Kabashi, and even now, Samoa Joe, and just any big dude that likes to beat people up. I'm pretty cool with.
That is awesome. So, do you remember the time in which you were kind of developing your character, and when did you get the SID SYLUM moniker?
So at first I thought I could be something Asylum, like Asylum, and I could be and it's stupid, but Asylum, I guess, is kind of cool. Uh, and I was almost Jake Asylum because I was doing the punk rock gimmick, and I was like, oh, I could do an A, and it could be the anarchy symbol. And I showed up to training one day, and Michelle Starr said, "You look like," I was, I'm 6'4", I was 175 pounds. So he said, "You look like a punk kid. You look like Sid Vicious. Your name's Sid," and it stuck. So he had some outlandish uh, gimmick ideas. So I think I was just thankful I didn't get turned into a wizard or something.
Very interesting. Well, I know when I was talking with Draven Vargas, he was also starting out in the early 2000s. And one thing that we talked about was, do you feel like there's a big difference looking at your entire career from what professional wrestling was in the early 2000s as compared to now?
Yeah, it's so different. Everyone is so much better now as a whole. Just seeing these kids who were a year or two in, and I just feel like they're leaps and bounds better than we were starting 20 years ago or anything like that. And just as a whole, I feel like athletes have gotten better. It's records are constantly broken, people are faster, people are stronger. Um, so I think people take better care of themselves and are more in tune to their body. So I think just how it kind of evolves is in the upward trajectory.
Yeah, no, definitely. I know another thing we were sitting there talking about was the impact that social media has had on professional wrestling. How do you kind of
Yeah.
view that now that you're still competing and seeing that rise of social media?
Yeah, it's I'm not great at it. I try, but you look at people like Ben Bishop, or Richard Holiday or Tommy, like those names that are at the top of independent wrestling social media, but their careers are built out of being online. Everything's clips now. If you're going through your phone, you want a 5-second clip. I'm not watching really anything over 30 seconds when I am helping anyone with promos or talking to newer rookies or newer kids or whatever. They want to film these big long minute promos and 3-minute promos, and these, no one watching them. No, it's social media has made it so you're giving something a minute. You need to get your point across in a minute. So I think it's kind of changed how, I guess, how the world views content, but wrestling really, it used to be you wouldn't send a promoter clips. They never wanted to see clips because you can make it look like anybody's good in clips. So you'd want to send full matches, but now really, no one has the time or the want. They're good with clips because that's what gets them the social media views, which then brings more people, more money, and yeah, it's changed everything really.
Yeah, that is very fascinating. Well, one thing I also wanted to bring up to you was how is it being a professional wrestler and building consistency?
That's everything. Sometimes you only get one shot. You need to be in the ring training, you need to be in the gym, you need to do everything because you never know what or who is there watching. We did a show a billion years ago in Vancouver, and it was a TLC match, and it was me and El Phantasmo, Ravenous Randy. There's a fourth in there. I apologize to whoever it is, but we did the match, and the dude from Live Nation was there watching it and was like, "Oh my God, this is so cool." And then reached out to ECW about doing the Commodore, which is Portland fans, like a Canadian Roseland, yes, but that's the show that got us that Commodore, which was 1,000 people twice a year and all that, and we didn't know anyone. He was there. It just so happened he was there and he loved the show, and then it led to this, great things for the company and us, and being able to work it and stuff like that. So I think that's the importance part of consistency, because if you have four great matches and one shit match, people are only going to remember the one bad one.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely heard that from quite a few wrestlers, that that's usually how it is. But one thing that I find really fascinating is, like, what kind of advice would you give to people just in general whenever they're trying to do something that has a level of difficulty to it? Do you have any advice as far as that is concerned?
I honestly, I think for anything, but just if you can take the first step, whether it be dipping your toes in or whatever, it's going to get easier. Uh, I don't think I would have joined wrestling school if my best friend didn't, also say, "Hey, we're going to do it." I don't know if I would have came back to wrestling here in Portland if Drexel didn't basically uh, force me to come back and start commentating, which then led to wrestling, and I'm having the time of my life. But uh, I've definitely got healthy pushes from friends, and then once you go once or whatever it may be, you take that first step. The second, the third, the fourth are so much easier. You just got to kind of take that initial risk, and I find it gets better.
That is really awesome. Well, I know that, like, throughout a 21-year career, especially starting back in 2005, do you feel like the quote unquote paying your dues is a little bit different now than it was back then?
Yeah, I think there's always a level of paying dues, but there it's different. Like, it's everything. I think it getting into the business gets easier every generation. It was harder for me 20 years ago than it is today, but 20 years before me it was even harder. It's more accessible, but I'll tell you, there's so many people helping out at shows that are 3-4 years in the business. Amira is, she wrestles all over the place, and she's known all over the everywhere, but she's there setting up the ring, every day or every show, I guess I'd say. So I think people are still paying their dues, but you hear a lot of old timers talk about it, and they're not carrying bags and buying us drink. It's gotten better. The business has gotten better in that sense, but I think dues are still being paid. There's just a lot more people now than it used to be.
Yeah.
There's it used to be we'd have maybe maximum 10 people setting up and taking down, and now after a DOA show there's 20. It's good, positive things.
Yeah. Well, I know you had just brought up Amira, and something that I find really fascinating is that people will say that she has it for some reason. Like,
Hmm.
what do you think is that consistency that you have to have where you can say you have it?
I don't think it's even consistency, because there's people that don't work hard and just kind of have it. Amira works really hard. Obviously she's in the gym all the time. She goes to training all the time. But sometimes people just have it where it makes them. In wrestling, I think it's an emotional connection to the audience, because people can go out there and do all the moves, all the cool moves, and do them really well, but people just don't care. Where someone could do half the moves, even half as well, and there's just something about them that makes you you can't take your eyes off of them. You know, Ravenous Randy is someone I've known for 20 years, and when he comes out there, everyone stops and looks. Wrestling fans love him. Uh, Casual fans love him. You know, non-wrestling fans love him. That is the epitome of, I think, having the it factor. I truly believe he's one in a billion.
That's really interesting. Well, I know, like, with having a 21-year career, you're going to have these highs and these lows. Can you kind of explain to us maybe a high that you had and then maybe what a low was for you?
Yeah. You know, I think so. When I started, I was breaking in 05 with ECCW. I think it was, I guess it was 5 years later. I started training at 17.
Here we go. All right.
There you
Can
go.
you
Back.
repeat that? Sorry, it
Yeah.
cut out.
Yeah. So when I broke in 05, in Vancouver, I was 17 when I started training, and I think, a couple months past 18 when I actually started wrestling. And then actually, I don't know, it came up on Facebook, but I think it was yesterday or the day before or something like that was the anniversary, the 16-year anniversary of winning the NWA Canadian Heavyweight Championship. And I think it was 20, I guess I was probably 23. And that was cool. I was the ECCW champion. And then a month later, I won the NWA Canadian Heavyweight. And that was pretty cool. It felt like I was finally, I was doing something. And then I won it again in 2014, sometime end of 2014. And I remember I had a show that night. I was at the gym. I was shrugging and I just kind of collapsed, and I was like, oh, my neck feels terrible. So I went and I stretched it out, and then I wrestled Kenny Lush that night. And we did the match and I got through, but I was kind of in rough shape, and I kept dropping stuff with my left hand. It just like would go dead. And this is probably a month out from the Commodore, which I mentioned. I was going to go in as the NWA Canadian Heavyweight Champion, it was a big show, and I just kept dropping stuff. And my friend's an ER nurse, and she makes me go to the hospital. Thank God I'm in Canada. I was in Canada. And they did x-rays, and they're like, okay, you need an MRI. And I was like, well, what did the x-rays say? And they're like, well, you need an MRI. So I got an MRI, and by the time this all happened, it was 6 days, I think, away from the show. And went to the doctor, and I had 2 discs in my neck pointing into going into my spinal cord, and then one in my back going out the other way. So and they're like, oh, you're done. So that, I think that was probably the lowest, for something that I was really looking forward to. I think it was the 3rd Commodore. Yeah, so that was that's you got to ride the highs and ride the lows.
Yeah, definitely. So is like there one conversation that you've had with somebody who is coming up into professional wrestling where you really gave them like, hey, I have this advice, maybe you can listen, maybe it'll help you out? Can you kind of guide us through maybe what you told them?
Yeah. I don't know. I talk a lot. I don't know. So I help out at Oregon Pro Wrestling School once a month, or once a week. Sorry. So there's lots of people, coming in, and there I can't think of anything in particular, but someone like Midi Tulips, who's coming up right now. I just working with him has been great, and you know, Cole Rivera, someone I've gotten, you know, close with. Those guys are awesome, and they would have been just as awesome if they had never met me. But I think maybe hopefully some piece of advice I've given them has been helpful.
Yeah, that is really cool. So, like, I know you had just brought up ECCW. Um, what makes you draw towards that company? Like, what do you enjoy about how they do professional wrestling?
Well, they're no more now. They I think they shut down in 2020. Um, but when I started, so I went to independent shows with my dad when I was like 5 to 8, and then I stopped when I was obviously 8, and I started going again about 13, and then ECCW had started, and I went to their school, and you know, they were the big promotion around in Vancouver. It just there wasn't as many promotions back then. You know, Vancouver had ECCW and ASW, um, and that was kind of it. There was nothing in Washington. There was DOA and WCWC in Oregon, and that was really it. You know, and the only ones who were really drawing a decent crowd was ECCW. So my trainer Aaron Idle uh, was one of the top guys for ECCW. Actually, so the show me and my best friend Kyle signed up for wrestling school or talked to them about it. Was the main event was Aaron Idle became her trainer, and one of my best friends, Brian Danielson and TJP was the main event. So, and I thought the world of Brian Danielson, you know, long before I met him or anything like that. And I just like, this is the greatest wrestler in the world. So the fact that I could see him live, I was like, well, why would I want to go anywhere else? You know, me and Kyle went and talked to Tim Flowers. Uh, he had a company called ICW they'd run shows every 4 months. And we went and talked to him, and he basically just kind of blew us off. Um, so when ECCW was like, we have a school, and Kyle was like, we should do this. So it really was just kind of the clear option. And, you know, I worked regularly there for 10 years, and it was, you know, it was a great place, but, you know, things change, things move on. So, yeah.
That is really awesome. Well, I know when I was talking to Jack Hammer, I was telling him about how there's this uh how do I say that? There's this kind of understanding whenever you're going into something where you want to be a professional.
Hmm.
Because I compared cooking and professional wrestling to kind of have this quality where, like, you want to be able to build yourself, but you have to make mistakes to be able to learn what not to do. Do you think that there's that similarity with professional wrestling and learning?
Yeah. I tell people all the time that you're doing the right stuff. You just need to get it, and the only way to do that is getting reps, because I truly don't feel that it's not a mistake if you learn something from it. You know, and I think cooking's probably the same way. I was a cook for a long time. um
Mhm.
but as long as you take something from it, you're gonna learn something. You know, it's not a mistake if you learn something from it.
Yeah.
You know, Ricky at the school of Ricky Gibson says, just be better than you were yesterday. And it's such a simple thing, but I really, when he said that, it just kind of like opened my brain. But you sorry yeah, you just, if you can learn something from what you've done, then it's never a mistake. And everyone is going to have a moment, hopefully, where one day just something clicks in your brain and you're like, oh, I can have fun with this now. And I feel that hopefully you reach that point and you can remember it. I did a match in '08, so I was 3 years in, and it was me and Brian Danielson versus Billy Swade and Kyle O'Reilly. And me and Kyle have been best friends since we were 8. We were really close to Swade. Brian Danielson, I think he had like just lost the Ring of Honor World Championship, or around, it was around that time. And we were crazy nervous, obviously. And Danielson was like, okay, I'll whip him. And you pull his feet. And I said, well, how am I going to know when to do it? And he goes, don't worry, I'll give you the sign. And he goes to whip Swade off, and he turns to me and goes, and gave me like a baseball sign and whipped him. And I'd laughed my ass off. I was like, that's the funniest thing. And then we were deciding who to get tagged in, and I hit him on the chest and go, don't worry, I got this one, kid. And he just put his head into the turnbuckle and was laughing for the first 45 seconds of the match. And then we got to the back, and we're like, how was it? And is there anything we work on? He's like, oh, it was great. I messed up this, and this, and this. You can't mess anything up. You're Brian Danielson, and we got through the whole match, and I was like, oh, that was really fun. And if this guy who looks like he's the most serious, wrestler in the world is having fun out there, then I probably can too. And it just changed how I view wrestling and how comfortable I felt in the ring. So I think if you can get to that point, things are going to get much easier for you.
That is really interesting. Well, I know you had just brought up about being nervous, and something that I've heard from some of the other professional wrestlers is if you're not nervous, then you don't care about what is going on. So after a 21-year career, do you still get nervous?
Oh yeah, just like I did the first match. You get your routines and things you do before, but it's still nerve-wracking, whether it's 50 people or 5,000 people. It never goes away. And I think, kind of like you said, it's because you care. I think if you're not nervous, like you said, you're probably indifferent to being out there, and you probably shouldn't be out there. But yeah, I don't think it ever goes away, and I don't think all the caffeine and smelling salts that we all do before we go out there probably helps that feeling. But
yeah, very interesting. Well, I know in August of 2024, I was actually able to go to a OPWS tryout and take my first bump for the first time. And like, do you kind of have to like really get used to that kind of impact? Because it did not feel good.
No. You just you build up a callus to it, and the more you do it and the better you get at it, it gets better, but it still sucks. It's when I first came back after I think 5-6 years, and I got in there and I went to the school, and I took a bump, and I was like, oh yeah, that's that feeling. But yeah, I don't think it gets better. I just think you get used to it. I've known quite a few people who wrestle for 3-4 years or shorter and are like, you know what, this hurts, and I don't want to do it anymore. They love wrestling. They can't physically and mentally get used to the impact.
Yeah, that is so interesting. So, like, what is like the biggest accomplishment that you feel you've achieved throughout your career?
Oh man. Now I think the answer has probably changed over the last year. I could championships or whatever, but I honestly just still being around, I think is an accomplishment. There was when I started, there was guys that were 15 and 20 years in, and they were awful. No one wanted to wrestle them. Their matches sucked. They talked down to everyone, and no one wanted to be around them. So I hope that after, I'm now that guy, but I like saying I'm pretty positive. I think people enjoy working with me, and Elliot Tyler said this to me a couple weeks ago, that his only goal in wrestling is to leave it better than he found it. And I think that should be the goal of everyone. So I think I'm most proud that I can still be a positive force on pro wrestling. And honestly, helping train the next generation is something I never thought I'd enjoy as much as I do.
That is really cool. Well, I know that the next question that kind of goes along with that, which is a perfect segue, is like, what do you think of the talent that are coming out of Oregon Pro Wrestling School? Like, do you look at them and the way that Ricky Gibson trains and whatever and be like, Oregon is in a really good set of hands as far as a trainer?
Absolutely. I did the Oregon Pro Wrestling School is the best wrestling school I've ever got to see or be a part of. It's pretty wild in wrestling to see a wrestling school that's not also a kickboxing gym or an MMA gym. So it's the fact that it's just a dedicated spot where he's got 2 rings and mats and such a dedicated, curriculum where you start and you do this, and this, and we write everything on the board. And I think it also shows in who's coming out of the school. Obviously Amira, I'm gonna Flaming Aces and Midi Tulips and Cole Rivera and Naomi King, and I know I'm forgetting obviously a bunch of people, but there is the level of how good the people coming out of the school, I think, shows what Ricky has built. And it's great to see. It's great to be a part of, and yeah, it's kind of magical there.
That is really awesome. Well, I wanted to bring up to you your AEW experience where you were
Yeah,
actually able to compete with Ricky Gibson and Eddie Pearl against the Dark Order. How was that whole experience for you?
it was fun. We were 12:30 heat, I like to say. It was fun. That match was my 4th match back after 5 years or 6 years off. So I was just texting with my buddy Kyle, and I was like, "Hey, man, maybe in the future you could, get me on as an extra or whatever." He goes, "Oh, I've never thought about. That's a great idea." And then I got an email, and it just happened real quick, and we were just kind of hanging out there, and you're just waiting to maybe get something. And I got called over, and they're like, "All right, you and Ricky and Eddie are going to go against Dark Order at," I can't remember what time it said, blah 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 time. Your agent John Cruz, and they'll come talk to you. And that was it. So you got geared up, and you got geared up earlier because they take your picture in all these different poses if they need to use you for graphics or whatever. So I think we maybe were still in our gear. And then we got to work Evil Uno and John Silver and Alex Reynolds, and they were great. They were awesome and super cool, and giving, it was very easy for them to just be like, "Okay, we're going to come in and beat you guys up for 5 minutes and then call it a day." But they were super cool about, making sure we got a shot to shine, and making everything work. So it was, I can't say enough great things about the Dark Order. They were really cool.
That is awesome. So, like, was that the biggest crowd that you have ever been in front of?
I don't even know how many were there. It's close, probably. I guess I did some NWA 50th or 60th anniversary shows in Dawson's Creek, which is a real place. And those were a few thousand were there. So that it's around there. Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. So, like, how was it when you were backstage and maybe all six of you were sitting there talking about, well, maybe we can do this? Did you get to kind of put any input in and be like, this is something I think would be really cool to do?
Yeah. Obviously, they're leading, and you have an agent or a producer there, but they're more, well, do this, and then what do you want to do here? And so they were super cool, and tons of input and things like that. So yeah, it was super positive all around.
That is really awesome. So, did you have any interaction with Tony Khan where maybe you passed by him just to say thank you or whatever? Was there any kind of interaction?
Yeah, he after a match, we went back through the curtain, and he just stood up, took his headset off, went, "That was great, thank you," and then put him back on. So that was cool. That was nice. He's obviously a
Yeah.
busy dude. So the fact that he took 5 seconds to,
Mhm.
thank us and all that, yeah, he was super cool. He a couple of interactions I've had with him, all that very brief, have always been super cool. So he he obviously loves wrestling, and I talk to people that kind of know him more, but he's just a dude who loves wrestling. So yeah, nothing but love for Tony Khan.
Really awesome. Well, I know your career, you've probably had a lot of car rides with different professional wrestlers going to whatever company or where you have to travel. Who was the funniest
Yeah.
person that you've ever traveled with in a car?
Oh God. Man. We used to do, honestly, you know what? Probably Tony Condello. So he is I think he was a wrestler. Is a wrestling promoter. He would do these tours called the Northern Hell Tour, which are really famous Canadian with the Hearts and everyone. And you basically drive uh, over Lake Winnipeg when it freezes to get to the different reservations that you can only drive to 3 weeks out of the year when it's cold enough. Other than that, it's just helicopters. Um, so you are sometimes driving for 18 hours, and it's just you're driving and you can just see snow on the other side. And if another car comes, everyone has to hop out and dig out the side of the road so you can get by. Uh, and Tony Candela was 60 something at the time, and he was doing all the driving, and he would just tell these crazy stories. And he smoked like a chimney, and you weren't allowed to smoke in the schools. So we'd get there, and he'd have his jacket on because it's -40, and someone would come and his hand would just go inside of his jacket pocket, and he'd talk to him and then go away because, you fucking bastard. And his hand would come out and his ash would be like that, and he'd just go back to it. And if someone came, it would just come back in his jacket. So it was pretty funny. Eddie Pearl is pretty funny if I'm traveling with Midnight Heat. Um, yeah, there's been some fun when me and Kyle traveled a bunch. We drove to California for some shows for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, and we had a ton of fun there. So I think anyone you're comfortable with when you're put in a car for 12 hours, things get a little weird. So
Yeah, that is very fascinating. So, like, how do you feel about Prestige Pro Wrestling actually closing the doors? Do you think that that's going to make a major impact on the companies that are still around the Pacific Northwest to kind of elevate themselves?
yeah, I think there's gonna be more companies coming into Portland who are trying to fill the spot.
Yeah.
Defy hasn't ran Portland a lot, but with Prestige gone, they've been running here more. Pandemonium's running here. There's other companies that I think are going to be coming here. So I think we're going to get inundated with, I think, a lot of different promotions coming in, and just trying to take over for Prestige. But I think Portland's kind of a weird place. They want something local, which I think is why Prestige did very well here. Is they're Oregon based. They used a lot of local talent mixed in with names and that they brought in. So I think it is gonna. I don't even think it's gonna leave necessarily a hole. But I think Prestige did give a lot of chance for people to get eyes on them, that will then hopefully translate, to people coming to more local shows. DOA has been doing 400 or 500, where we were down to 300. And so Prestige closing sucks, but I think it left the wrestling scene in Portland in a better spot than they found it. So
that is really awesome. Well, I know it was just announced recently that at DOA Port Slamdia, you'll be against Naomi King. How can you tell us, how is that match for you?
Well, it'll Naomi's great, but she's tiny and she's new. So I think it'll probably go about how everyone expects. I don't think it'll be a long one. And I'm going to come out just fine. I'm going to be fine. We'll see, but.
Oh, that is awesome. Well, I know when I was scrolling throughout your Instagram, I actually saw that you were able to go to Alcatraz Island. And
yeah,
just to get completely out of pro wrestling for a second, how was that experience? Because I've been in the bay on a boat and going by Alcatraz, but I've never actually been on the island. So how was that?
It was cool. I have seen the movie The Rock with Nick Cage and Sean Connery hundreds of times. So it was cool going there. It kind of blends in. So my wife and I actually took 3 months where we drove around the country and went to all the lower 48 states, and did different stuff. So that was really at the end of our trip. So it kind of blends in a little bit, but it was super cool. It's really not a good structure. There's like a section of the island in the corner you can't go to certain times of the year because some birds build their nests there, and if you try to go there, you'll be attacked by hundreds of birds. So it's like sectioned off for part of the year because you'll get your eyes poked out by birds. So it was cool, but it's I don't know. I feel like it's going to be condemned sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it actually going crazy to look into the cell and see the heads or the holes that they, went through?
Yeah.
It has to be a surreal experience.
Yeah, they had this was Al Capone's cell or Machine Gun Kelly's cell, and it's haunting in a sense of, I'm not a supernatural person, but it felt spooky. That place in the 40s and 50s and all that would have been terrifying. I looking out into the water and seeing how far away the bay is, with the way it really would have seemed like there was no way out. So yeah, it was cool. It felt like a piece of history, and again, where they filmed one of my favorite movies. So
that is awesome. Well, I have 2 more questions for you. The one before the last is, what would be the best retirement match that you could have, and what would you have go on in it?
Honestly, because it's so when I came back from breaking my neck and stuff, I had one match, and it was right before I was moving to America. I didn't know if I was going to wrestle again. But I came back, and then when I I logged on to the internet, and it said SID SYLUM's retirement match. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm having a retirement match. So, honestly, it was perfect. I've ruined it now, but it was me and Bishop at the main event of the Commodore Ballroom. 1,000 people, sold out. And he was my tag partner for a long time. One of my best friends. My wife walked me to the ring. Uh, I had it. So if I stop tomorrow, I've really had the best situation. I guess if there was one thing I would do that I couldn't, I'd like to wrestle Kyle O'Reilly again. My best friend, we had our very first match together. So we're always talking about a way we could possibly wrestle again. So maybe it would be nice to go out the same way I came in, I guess.
That is really cool. Well, I always love asking this question to professional wrestlers just as a last question. And what is it to you? Like, what does professional wrestling mean to you as a person?
Everything. Basically all my best friends are through wrestling. I met my wife through wrestling. I am 2 to 3 days a week. I am either at the school or I have a show doing something like this. So it's, over half my life has been involved in professional wrestling. I don't know who or what I'd be doing if it wasn't for pro wrestling. It's given me everything, and I'm very lucky that I still get to do it. It's just the best.
That is so freaking awesome. Well, I just want to thank you for actually joining me here tonight. It was an absolute pleasure to sit down and talk with you.
Yeah, you too, Cody. Thank you so much for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. All right. Well, I hope to see you soon at a show, and I hope you have a good night.
You too, Cody. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, all right, you guys. So that was Interesting's podcast interview with SID SYLUM. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe button, ring that notification bell so you guys get notified whenever I upload content. Make sure to go and follow me on social media at CodyT503. That's Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. I hope all have a very good night. I'll catch you guys later.